Welcome back. Today we are reviewing Friday the 13th Part 3, 3D. So I hope you enjoyed the first two parts. If you haven't seen those yet, I'll link them in the description to this video. But without further ado, let's get on with this review, shall we? Friday the 13th Part 3, 3D. Released by Paramount Pictures. Original theatrical release date, Friday, August 13th, 1982. It was directed by Steve Miner, who returned from the second film. Writers Martin Kittrosser and Carol Watson. It was shot on a budget of $4 million and a worldwide box office gross of $36,690,067 was its return. That gross, adjusted for inflation in 2020 US dollars, is the equivalent of $104,910,988.28. It was actually the first film to dethrone E.T. at the box office. This was initially designed to be the end of the series as a trilogy. The original storyline was supposed to focus on a post-traumatic Ginny Field, who begun learning self-defense and returned to college after surviving her ordeal in the previous film. After finding Paul's corpse inside her dormitory, she prepares to track down Voorhees and face him in a final confrontation. However, this concept was abandoned when Amy Steele declined to reprise her role. We of course start with a recap of Part 2. Seeing Ginny getting over on Jason with the old, "I'ma dress up like your decapitated mama" routine. Have you ever seen anything like this, Pat?
Just once, John, the 1975 Cotton Bowl.
You'll have to excuse me, I couldn't help myself with that one. It was a perfect setup. We meet Harold and Edna next, and she's watching the news and hears about the 8 corpses being discovered from Part 2. They show Ginny on the news. Edna sees Jason outside of her window but thinks it's her husband Harold. Harold is feeding the fish and eats some of the food like a moron. And he has a rabbit sitting in the produce in their store, which is terribly unhygienic. And he casually eats and drinks a bunch of stuff while he's walking around the store. Edna orders him to put the rabbit back in its cage, and he finds another rabbit dead because of a snake. Harold, frightened, then immediately goes to the toilet and drinks some whiskey when he thinks he hears something, and is right because it's Jason right outside the door, who probably hits him in the chest with that meat cleaver because he didn't wipe or wash his hands after he got off the toilet. Oh, don't worry, Edna isn't far behind because she's looking for him and takes a sewing needle to the back of the neck through a window. So we meet our main cast of characters. The gang includes pregnant Debbie, her boyfriend Andy, prankster Shelley, his blind date Vera, who does not reciprocate his feelings, and stoners Chuck and Chili. They're accompanying Chris to her family home in Higgins Haven, located on Crystal Lake near the camp, to meet her boyfriend Rick. Some obligatory pot humor ensues, which I'm always in favor of, and they pass the murder scene of Harold and Edna. Then they happen across Abel, played by character actor David Wiley of Hogan's Heroes, and he's basically replacement Crazy Ralph, who shows them an eyeball he swiped from the murder scene. Our gang arrives at their destination, Higgins Haven, and Chris goes into the house and is greeted by Rick, her boyfriend. I'm sorry, that will not happen again, I promise you. So after Shelley had a prank go awry in the house regarding Chris, Vera and him decide to go to the store, where they're accosted by our secondary antagonists, 3 bikers named Ali, Loco, and Foxy, who are rude to them in the store basically over nothing. It's all fun and games until Shelley backs into their motorcycles. Then Ali breaks the windshield with a chain, and they drive off, but circle back and run over the motorcycles with Rick's car nonetheless. When Vera and Shelley return, Rick is none too happy about the condition of his car, with the broke out windows and all. The biker gang finds out where our kids are staying and come to drain the gas from the van they came in and also use it to light the barn on fire. When Foxy sneaks off to the barn where Jason happens to be hiding because she's not doing what she was supposed to be doing. Jason plucks Foxy off the rope swing on top of the barn in the hayloft and kills her with a pitchfork to the neck. When her friend Loco comes looking, he sees her dead and then gets stabbed in the stomach and impaled with another pitchfork, as you saw in the video's opening. Then Ali goes toe-to-toe with Jason after Jason throws Loco's dead body at him and gets taken out quickly in a small skirmish. Rick and Chris are sitting and talking, running the battery down on his car. She's going through what happened to her when she was attacked in the woods by a hideously disfigured mongoloid who turned out to be Jason, dragged her off, but didn't kill her. Then she woke up in her own bed and her parents acted like the thing didn't happen. Meanwhile, back at the house, Andy and Shelly are having a juggling contest until Deb distracts Andy and they leave, presumably to go upstairs and get busy. Shelly gets shot down by Vera again, who goes outside for a moment to get some air. Andy and Deb are trying to figure out the logistics of hammock sex. Chuck and Chili are passed out on the couch. When Chuck wakes up to use the outhouse, he's smoking a joint when it starts to shake. It turns out to be Chili. Chuck watched Jason walk into the barn thinking it was Shelly. They go to scare him, not knowing it was not Shelly. Vera's sitting down by the water when Shelly reaches up and grabs her foot, playing one of his pranks, of course, then jumps out of the water in a hockey mask with a spear. They argue about her not liking him, and rejected, he walks away. Vera sits back down at the end of the dock, while Shelly goes to investigate the barn with spear gun in hand and the infamous goalie mask. Vera accidentally throws Shelly's wallet in the lake, and she goes to get it. Jason comes walking down. She mistakes him for Shelly. He shoots her in the eye with a spear gun, and she dies right there. Next, Jason sets his sights on Deb and Andy as he heads upstairs with his machete. Andy goes downstairs to get a beer after a shower, and while walking on his hands, he gets annihilated by Jason, and it's a really great angle shot up from the floor as his body goes down. Deb is still in the shower, then gets out looking for Andy, and as she's reading a Fangoria, blood drips down on her from the rafters. She looks up and sees Andy dead, folded in half with his innards out. Then a machete plunges upward through her neck, and she is toast. Chili has Chuck go down to the cellar to check the fuse box because the power went out. And back upstairs, Shelly comes falling in the door with his throat slit, and Chili thinks it's another one of his pranks. Meanwhile, back in the basement, Jason throat lifts Chuck into the fuse box and electrocutes him. Chili runs upstairs only to come back down and be run through with a fireplace poker. Rick and Chris are still walking back through the woods en route to El Cabin de los Muertos. When they return, they can't find anyone, so of course they split up and Rick goes outside. Chris is just around the corner while Jason is killing Rick and crushes his skull until his eyes pop out in what was at the time a really cool scene. The effects, however, did not really hold up. After Rick's death, Chris of course goes out to the barn, finds Loco's body. A chase ensues between her and Jason. It involves the van, some Benny Hill type antics. Needless to say, Jason, including him headbutting his way through the window after she rolls the window up on his hands. She hides in the barn. Jason obviously makes his way in, frustrated when he can't find her. Chris can't, and it's funny because she can't manage to lay flat on a beam, and falls onto Jason, who's slow enough that she whacks him in the head with a shovel. Then he gets hung by his neck. So after Jason was hung by that rope outside the barn doors, Chris opens them and he's hanging literally right in front of her. He undoes his rope, unmasks momentarily, and she realizes it was him that attacked her all those years ago. Ali attacks him from behind. Yes, Ali was not dead, only to lose a hand in the process, then be chopped to death. But this gives Chris an opening. She hits Jason in the forehead with an axe, but he lunges at her, another 3D moment, and seemingly drops dead. Then Chris pulls an Alice and goes out in the lake in a canoe and falls asleep. Wakes up and sees Jason in her house coming for her. She tries to paddle away. Then she's pulled out of the boat and into the water by the corpse of Pamela Voorhees. It was a dream sequence. She's escorted away rather roughly by the sheriff and is driven away in a state of shock. The end. For those of you keeping score at home, here's the final body count. Number 1, Harold Hockett. cleaver to the chest. Number 2, Edna Hockett, stabbed in the back of the head. Number 3, Fox, pitchfork through the neck. 4, Loco, pitchfork through the stomach. 5, Vera, spear through the eye. 6, Andy, chopped in half. 7, Debbie, stabbed through the back. 8, Shelly, throat slit off screen. 9, Chuck, electrocuted. 10, Chili, impaled with a hot fire poker. 11, Rick, head squeezed to death. And number 12, Ali, hand cut off and hacked to death. And now for my final thoughts. A fun guilty pleasure movie filled with the familiar horror tropes, but inventive enough in the effects department to keep you invested in what method of disposal Jason will use to dispatch his youthful fodder, and it doesn't disappoint in the least. From the stalking of Harold in the opening, culminating with a meat cleaver to the chest, to the squeezing of Rick's eye out of its socket in an enjoyable 3D scene, and the unforgettable spear gun death of Vera, this one was chock full of slasher goodness we all love. I still have to question the decision to go with 3D for this film because of the quality effects wasn't the greatest, but I'll give them credit for trying something new for the genre at the time. The overall cinematography was really good and very Halloween-esque by design, which definitely adds to the overall appeal of the movie's aesthetic when it comes to portraying Jason. Incidentally, this is the only entry in the series where the name Jason isn't said once on screen. Even though the venue is changed for the third time in 3 movies, it stayed in the same basic vicinity as its original setting of Camp Crystal Lake, moving to the Packanack Lodge in Part 2, still on Crystal Lake and within walking distance of the original camp, and to Higgins Haven, where Chris' family home is located in the third part. I appreciate the fact that they're setting up an area that is basically Jason's default home turf, and it instills a feeling of dread for the characters. The character development is about what you expect from a movie in this series, although earlier entries did a far better job than the end of them did, as we get just enough backstory in each person to make them endearing somewhat, or make us want to see their demise, as it is in the case of Ali, Foxy, and Loco. Jason gets his iconic goalie mask in this entry, and it would go on to be synonymous with the franchise as well as horror and pop culture moving forward. I love Dana Kimmel as Chris. She's an absolute beauty of a final girl, witty and resourceful, yet a dash of naivete that gives her the charm needed of a lead actress in this genre at the time of its release. She was feminine, yet assertive, and strong when she needed to be, and that's why I liked her as a final girl in this series. Plus, she's one like Ginny from the previous entry who completely survived. I love this one, from the main theme song by Master Harry Manfredini to the final jump scare fake out of Pamela Voorhees pulling Chris out of the boat during her dream sequence. Completely rewatchable, enjoyable slasher goodness from start to bloody finish. I give Friday the 13th Part 3 a final score of 6.5 out of 10. I realize that this puts it in entry a half point ahead of Part 2, but this one was more fun than its predecessor in some respects, and while some may not like that in their slasher horror, I do, depending on the tone, and this is my review. It was a departure from the established mythos of the previous 2 films in an adventurous yet recognizable way, and it kept to what makes a great slasher movie. You see those title cards up on the screen. You know what time it means. It's time for you to do all the YouTube things. Bitch slap that like button for me. If you are so inclined, if you think I have earned it, please let today be the day that you hit that subscribe button. I do appreciate it greatly, as I put a lot of time and a lot of man hours into these videos, the live streams, and trying to entertain you folks and keep it light and breezy, but serious when we need to be right here on the channel, as the nature of the beast deems it so at times. With that being said, I'm Tepokuyan of the Place to Be Reviews. I have been here with all of yous very graciously. And remember, if I don't see you, have yourselves a great day and a pleasant tomorrow. I'm gone till later on. I will catch you, my friends, on the next one. I'm out. Peace.